Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LeanTossup Call of Duty League podcast. Guys, we've made it. This is technically the end of the regular season, I guess. Basically, it's the end of online scheduled COD. Every other game from now is currently not scheduled. Every game will be seeded accordingly. There are more games of COD, and there's another tournament after, but for now, this is it. This is the end of the scheduled regular season. To mark the end of yet another Call of Duty League season, I am joined tonight by my co-host, CDLMetrics. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. We're at the end, but yeah, last 10, I think, qualifiers online this weekend. Those can be done. I'm glad they're done. Not that online qualifiers are like horrible, but LAN is what we're here for, and we've got a couple more tournaments to go that are all on LAN. So yeah, looking forward to those, but we have a lot to shake out in the standings, both for Major 4 and for Champs. I can't really think of another end of season stretch like this where there are this many teams fighting for a champ spot and where every game means so much for these teams. It's an exciting time to be a fan of the league, and yeah, excited to break down the games this weekend with you as always.
Yes, so let's get into it this week. So the news of the week. So yeah, as you mentioned, this is getting nuts. So this here on the left is the season-long point standings here. Obviously, FaZe, Ultra, Optic, and Subliners, the top 5 as always. And again, as we've been seeing this all year, 4 is almost double 5. It's not quite, because 160 times 2 is 320, and it's 295, but when you're looking at that kind of gap, it's functionally a rounding error. You're basically double here at this point. That's crazy that there's such a gap between 4th and 5th, but that is where we are. And then, obviously, with the exception of Boston, who I guess has been eliminated, probably.
Yes.
I'm going to go with yes. There's never been any official confirmation of it, but okay, how many points is it to win a major?
100, and they could get 20 this weekend. So it'd be 120 on top of 50, which would be 170. The issue is there are too many teams that can box them out. So I'm almost certain they are eliminated now.
Ah, okay.
And functionally they are, because they won't win any more games. So
no, theoretically, okay, I think there's probably no way Boston can get to 5th. They theoretically could get to 5th, but then at that point, someone else will come up ahead of that, I assume.
There's too many games to play out, though, Robert. Yeah, that's my point. Yeah. Is they're getting boxed out by 7 other teams that will accumulate points. So even if they win out, I think they're on the wrong side of that cutoff line. Yeah.
Actually, we're at the point where subliners have locked into 4th. They can't even go lower than 4th. Imagine locking yourself into top 4 top 4. Like you will play a lower seed at champs. That's basically where subliners are at this point. But yeah, I think Boston is functionally eliminated, but they're functionally eliminated anyways. But anyways, that was a weird side tangent. But look at this: 160 to 140. Again, a reminder that a win is 10 points, and at a major that is probably more depending on the round. It varies depending. First round is like 10, I think. But look at literally anyone from Rocker to Heretics can win. It's crazy. This is going to be the craziest potential. And the thing is, it's not even just if you were like, oh, it's like crazy between 8th and 11th, you'd be like, oh, okay, these guys are pretty safe. No, literally anyone from 5th to 11th could make it, and anybody from 5th to 11th could be eliminated. And the thing is, the way this year has worked, you're at a point where it's literally, like, when you deal with teams and leagues and stuff like this, it's like generally the top teams come out on top. But when the gap is so small, but like the gap just seems to always be there, is better than, like, it's just, it feels like anything could happen, but it just feels like it just will just stay the same, if that makes any sense. It just feels like it's very exciting, but also very boring. And we've been talking about this for weeks, but finally, this week will be the penultimate week for this, and the next week we'll set it up. That being said, look at the standings for this major, right? This is where you can see some teams are more favored than others. As the famous Animal Farm quote said, some animals are more equal than others. Some teams are more equal than others here. Optic, what happened? What has happened here? And this is the thing. It was actually funny because on Friday, Optic played Carolina. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm watching this game. I had Carolina. I think I had Carolina plus 1.5, and then they covered that after 2 maps. But I didn't bet the money line because I'm like, it's just a bit much. I got the plus 1.5 at plus 120. I'm happy with that's fine. And I'm like, what? Do I care about the outcome of the rest of this game? And I'm like, no, not really. There isn't even 1580. There's not even the season long 1580 implications for this game. But I realized, oh, wait a minute, there are. Because if Optic loses, they can go to the losers bracket, and that makes their ability to get points in the major more. Although it doesn't actually matter for the race to 1580, it actually matters ever so slightly because then Optic has no margin of error in the major. And that's crazy. Because the thing is, as it stands right now, I have 6 of the 8 teams in the top 8 for the major as it stands right now. Obviously,
Mhm.
there's more room for you to get in with Carolina and Minnesota, and even with Optic. But there's just this crazy. There's a crazy logjam here too, right? These differences are small as well, but there's a lot that could happen here, right? It's pretty crazy, and we have no idea what happened to Optic. A lot of close games there, a lot of close losses. But yeah, this week is gonna be a very interesting week. I so much can happen in just the next in just the next couple of in just the next week here.
Yeah, and just to touch on these very briefly. So the my overall view of the season standings is just, yeah, look at 8th, ninth, 10th, 11th. Like, they literally all have 140 points. I do think if you're Carolina, if you're Minnesota, it's tougher for you because right now they're on the outside looking in for winners bracket, and they only play once this weekend each, so they need to win and probably get help from some other teams in order to get that winners bracket spot. I think if you're Miami and Seattle, even though, yeah, you're right, 160 points to 140 points is not that big of a difference, and right now that's the difference between 6th and ninth. The fact that you are very likely to start in winners bracket for Major 4, and you might just play each other, that's a really good outlook for those two teams. It's basically if you win your winners bracket round 1 game, you're good. So yeah, those two teams looking good. Yeah, the race for the 8 seed is insane. LA Thieves have that nice little 5-point cushion to keep them above water, which is going very nicely for them. And then, yeah, just that right side there with the seeding for Major 4. Optic, you bring up what has happened, and they have regressed. There's no doubt about it. They are somewhat worse in hardpoint and control. Their S&D has been a little shaky as well. Some of those are round 11 losses that can go the other way very quickly. But I just want to point out Optic, if you look at that furthest right column, they're 11 and 12 in map count, which is actually 7th among teams. Not saying that's good, but I'm saying that's 7th. Their seeding right now is 11th. So that is a bit of bad luck. I chalk it up more as bad luck than performance drop off, but it's definitely a bit of both. But I do skew to the side of Optic will bounce back. I just think they're in this weird rut right now, and some of that bad luck will turn for them. But yeah, they've definitely put themselves in a pickle here. The good news for them is they're safe for champ, so they can play with their food a little bit here to end the season, and they'll still be at champs with a very nice seed. So yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out this weekend. It's going to be exciting. But there are some crazy tiebreaker scenarios we have to talk about.
Yes, and I think that is next, right? So these are you can walk through these. I think you made these slides. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just looking at those two tables we were looking at, or specifically the Major 4 seeding table, and I just walked through the games this weekend and said, how can we make this chaotic? Like, how can we have all these teams tie each other? Because right now, you said it's a log jam for a lot of these teams. On the left side, and I call this hypothetical scenario chalky because it is somewhat chalky if you look at what results need to happen for this outcome. So on the left side, you have hypothetical results for each match this weekend, and then the odds of that team outright winning the match listed below. In order, Friday you would need Miami to beat Seattle, which is a mild upset, but Miami is only even money to win, so very doable. Atlanta over Toronto, they're a big favorite, and then LA Thieves versus Vegas is a straight toss-up. And these can go a couple different ways, and I'll talk about that at the end, but just for the sake of this exercise, this is the example I laid out. Saturday, again, you would need FaZe to win minus 1,000 favorites over Miami. You'd need Seattle to win over LAG, they're minus 250. Texas need to beat Boston, which is almost a lock because Boston is that bad. And even with optic struggles, they're minus 5,000. Yeah. It's insane. Vegas minus 225 in that Seattle bucket of sizable favorite to beat Minnesota. And then going to Sunday, you would need optic to win again. A bit of an upset there, plus 110 against Toronto. And these odds maybe have shifted since I put them in, but ballpark, this is what they are. You would need Boston to lose again to Carolina, which is a big, heavy favorite for that to happen. And then to close it out, you would need New York to beat LA Thieves. Again, minus 250 favorites. So really, it's straight up chalk. You need LA Thieves to win a toss-up, and then you need Miami and Texas to win 2 slight upset games. If all of that happens, which it's very unlikely to, but if we get something like this that's relatively chalky outcomes, we would have the standings listed on the right side of the screen there. So Atlanta would be 7-0. They're the 1 seed easily. The 2 seed would be New York, alone at 5-2. You would have a 4-way tie with Toronto losing twice this weekend, Seattle winning 1 of 2, Miami winning their lone game, and Vegas splitting their 2. You would have 4 teams tied at 4-3. The order I put them in is just the order that they're in the standings right now. That might flip depending on how convincing those wins are. If they're 3-0s, you're more likely to move up in the standings, or if there's head-to-head tiebreakers, I don't know. But and it doesn't really matter for those teams because they're all in upper bracket. You would just have to figure out who's playing who, because the 3 would play the 6, the 4 would play the 5. Going down a line, you have a 4-way tie where 2 teams make winner's bracket, 2 teams are in lower bracket. And I will say, if this were to happen, Optic, in my opinion, would be the best shot to vault themselves up into the 7 seed or 8 seed because their map set record, as it stands now, is 11-12. And in this hypothetical, they are winning both series. Bare minimum, they're a game above 500. LAG are right at 500, I believe, but in this scenario, they're losing to Seattle. LA Thieves in this scenario split, they're already below 500, and Carolina in this scenario win, but are still below 500, but maybe can vault themselves up. So it would just get crazy with maps. I don't know how it would shake out, but you'd have a very unlucky couple of teams and a very, lucky couple of teams. And then Minnesota and Boston would round out the 11 seed and 12 seed. So that's a lot to have happen, but I just wanted to point out that this sort of outcome is pretty likely. Like, if you took all the possible outcomes of how this weekend plays out, this specific one isn't that crazy. So yeah, we could see some huge tiebreakers. You could flip a couple if you wanted Minnesota to beat Vegas on Saturday afternoon. Minnesota would vault themselves up into that 7 through 10 seed conversation, and Vegas would vault themselves down, whatever, shoot themselves in the foot. So then you'd have a 6-way tie of teams at 3 and 4. So yeah, that would be just absolutely insane. But I do have one other hypothetical, if you wanted to flip to that one, which would be basically as chaotic as possible. Unless you wanted to speak on this one for a little bit. But yeah, this one is just pure chaos. So, okay, yeah, so this one, everything is the same, except that last game on Friday, we're flipping, so Vegas beats LA Thieves. Again, that's a toss-up, so minus 120 odds for either team. The Saturday last game, Minnesota over Vegas, like I mentioned before. And then the Sunday night game, LA Thieves would have to upset New York. So we're throwing in a couple more upsets, namely Minnesota plus 162 and LA Thieves plus 175 on Saturday and Sunday. And if those results were to happen, we would have on the right side where it is Atlanta alone at the top. There is a 5-way tie for the 2 through 6 seed, a 5-way tie for the 7 through 11 seed, and then there's still Boston holding down the fort in the 12 seed. So that is unlikely to happen, but again, is a possibility, which is crazy. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on either of these. I just thought they were fun.
Didn't they do something to basically get rid of tiebreakers? Or no? Are there still tiebreakers possibly?
There's still
tie-breaking games.
Games, I think, still could happen. There was one a couple years ago between Ravens and Thieves, I think it was, that didn't get broadcasted, but it got played in the background in the shadows. But for this sort of scenario, I think it's like head-to-head record, but if not all of the teams have played each other, then you go to map record, overall map win percentage. And then if there's a tiebreaker there, then you go to like strength of schedule, I think. So you see how your opponents fared and all that stuff. So yeah, I don't think we would get to tie-breaking matches if there are this many tied with each other. It would just come down to strength of schedule and stuff like that. But it's chaotic nonetheless.
Yeah, it would be very interesting to say the least, for sure. Okay, moving on to the major four qualifiers. Expected wins, again, this is pre-week 4. FaZe are expected to get that 6.55. That they're playing Toronto, so Toronto has some chance against them. So that's why the 6.55, not the full 7. Toronto 4.83, Subliners 4.6, Seattle 4.0. Vegas could be in the winners bracket and on the hosting side of this as well. Miami 3.67, LAG 3, Thieves 3, Carolina 3, Texas 2.5, Minnesota 2.5, and then poor Boston. But anyways, this is what you're talking about with that log jam here to break, right? Like this is we'll cut it off here. There's 5 teams here that are basically rounded to 3, all around the 3, right? And maybe they're not all going to end up, they actually probably can't literally all end off on 3 wins, 3 and 4, but there's a chance that 3-4 of them definitely can. So this week is going to be, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this all shakes out and what the tiebreakers even look like for that. Beating the market and combined model results. Better week for me last week, not so great week for you. Unfortunately, you double dipped on Optic versus Subliners, and that stung a little bit. And then, but you got Miami against Carolina. That was good. I like that one too. I didn't bet that one because I didn't see the value in it, but I was very happy when Miami did win that one. I cashed Legion versus Seattle and Ultra versus Thieves, but then for somehow LEG swept Vegas. Somehow, not sure how that happened exactly, but it did. So, yeah. I have no more words. I don't know what happened there. Okay. Combined model plays actually pretty well, plus a unit here. Texas, map 2 did not cover, map 3 did win. FaZe minus 2.5 and map 2. Carolina map 3, Miami map 2. LAG map 2. Boston did not win map 3. I don't think they won an entire map last weekend or the weekend before. Legion plus 1.5 and map 1 did not win map 3. Toronto won map 1 and Thieves won map 2. Sunday, Toronto map 1, FaZe map Moneyline. They did not cover the 2.5 against Thieves, and they did not win map 1. They lost the hard point to Thieves. And then Texas obviously did not win map 3 against the Subliners. I think they got 3-0 swept. Yes. Match previews. Here we go. So odds via Bet365. Unfortunately, no spreads this week. Let me just check to see if there are spreads up yet. If not, if they are, I'll just say them. I don't think there are. No spreads this weekend, but that's okay. We still have our modeling, and they don't necessarily do the spreads. Map. First game. Miami versus Seattle. Miami plus 100 on the money line. Seattle minus 138. Minus 1.5 plus 175. Seattle map 1 minus 110. Minus 125 map 2. And then minus 163 map 3. We're both our models like Miami here. We both have Miami over 50%, and getting that at plus 100 is pretty good. We especially like Miami plus 1.5, even though it's a tad high at minus 250, but we still do like it. I like Miami map 1. You like Miami more map 3. Yeah, full-on fade of Seattle here?
Yeah, I've been liking Miami a lot the last few weeks, and it all goes back to like their initial match versus Optic to start the qualifiers was without their starting 4. They had a substitute in. That did not go well. That was Optic's only win so far, funny enough, in a sweep. And I mentioned, let's maybe just throw that in the garbage for Miami because that's not their normal lineup. They're playing a top 4 team. It was probably going to be a sweep. It was probably going to be ugly regardless. So since then, they've been looking really good. And I just think they've been undervalued throughout the year. And this match seems no different. Like, Seattle are in a good spot as well. Like, they should make the winner's bracket. They're in a nice spot for champs. But they've had some inconsistency the last couple weeks where Miami, I think, is starting to find their form in a really nice way. Yeah, this one is basically a toss-up for me, but my numbers do point to Miami, so that is the direction I'm leaning. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me at all if Seattle come out and look like their old selves, or look like that Seattle that we're accustomed to seeing sometimes. But yeah, I do Miami a little bit more in this spot. I do think whoever wins this match is really comfy for the 5 seed, both at Major 4 or even the 4 seed at Major 4, but 5 seed specifically for the champs, right? These two teams are tied in CDL points. If you win this game, you are starting in winner's bracket, and if you win this game, you are catapulting yourself above the other team because these teams are tied for the 5 seed essentially right now. So yeah, winner of this gets a nice little cushion. They feel good about their outlook. So yeah, a really interesting match that we're getting right away on Friday. One to keep in mind, but I do lean with Miami ever so slightly in this spot with you.
Yeah, I agree with that. Friday, match 2, FaZe versus Ultra. What are the... Oh, this is the point totals. Oh, okay, I was wondering, what is... It was one of those were 160, 160, now it's 475, 430. FaZe versus Ultra. FaZe minus 250 money line, minus 1.5, plus 100, minus 138 map 1, minus 188 in the search, and minus 225 in the hard point. Here we go. Here's our model projections. I am weirdly really low on Ultra. My model does weird things with Ultra. I can't figure them out. They will look good at they will win hard points and they're good at that. And then they will look bad in a search, or they'll look bad in a control, or they'll look... And the same as FaZe, right? FaZe can sometimes look like the most dominant team, and then there are some games when you see FaZe, and you're like, this team is like literally the worst team. There are moments when they were playing Thieves in that hard point where you're just like, what are they doing? Like, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? They shouldn't be doing this, etc. It's just, it is so frustrating watching FaZe. My model likes FaZe minus 1.5. I feel like that's a really... I'm probably not touching this game. I'm probably, if I had to, I'd say gun to my head, it's probably FaZe minus 1.5, but I don't think I have the heart to bet that. What do you see here for this one?
Yeah, this one is trickier because the question you have to ask is, how do these two teams want to play this game? Because we've seen FaZe for a couple weeks kind of play with their food a little bit, right? Play more sub-base hardpoint, and it's been a little shaky. They've won some, they've lost some still. Do FaZe still want to be in that let's round out the map set mode of their season, with this being the last qualifier stage before it's like all systems go, we're trying to win every series? I tend to think that these teams are just going to play this straight up. No BS, just veto what you're going to veto. Let's get really good practice in before Major 4, before champs, and this is really good practice, essentially, for both of these teams. And let's not forget, Toronto could absolutely catch FaZe for the overall number 1 seed. A win here would help a lot, and then if they were to place higher than FaZe at Major 4, it's not a guarantee they would pass them, but that gets really interesting at that point. If Toronto were to win this and win Major 4, they, I would say, are looking live for that overall 1 seed, which this year might mean something. I just think that 8 seed team, whoever it's going to be at champs, you would much rather play them than LA Thieves or whoever that 7 seed ends up being. I do think there's a small tier break that is worth noting. And you'd rather have, assuming you win that first round game at champs, you'd rather play the 4-5 than the 3-6. That's my thought on this. These teams play this straight up. My numbers reflect that outcome. I'm very close to market pretty much everywhere. I do lean Toronto. Their hardpoint has come around the last few weeks, and right now they're listed as even money underdogs in map 1. So the way I would maybe play it if I wanted to would be like, wait for the map set to come out. If you see map 1 is maybe a more favorable map for Toronto, if it is sub-base for some reason, or if it's another map where maybe Toronto has a slight edge on, it's their map pick, it looks like, then I think you can pull the trigger on that side there. But that's the only thing I see here. I do think FaZe are clear favorites in Search and Destroy, clear favorites in Control, and I do think that will carry them to win this, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if Toronto can force a Game 5 and really make this interesting. I lean Toronto, but if you want to go FaZe, I'm not going to hate on that at all. This should just be a great match, no matter what.
Yeah. Okay, next game. Legion versus Thieves. This one is just dead even. Minus 120 both sides. Thieves slightly favored by the fact that they have the minus 1.5 in front of them, plus 200. They are not favored in the hard point. They are favored in the search, and they are favored in the control. So plus 100 in the hard point, minus 138 in the search, and minus 125 in the control. All year, my model loves Vegas Legion. Still don't know why my model loves them so much. I don't know what it is, but it does, especially in hardpoint. My model is like, this is like the one of the best hardpoint teams. But yeah, I like Legion. You like them significantly less. What are your thoughts on this? I think you also don't like Thieves in the hardpoint, but you seem to like Thieves a lot more in the search and in the control.
Yeah, this is one where I think my model tends to miss these games a lot, where yes, we have two teams that are very close in terms of how you power rate them. One team is trending up, like very clearly up. One team is doing okay, but a little bit on and off at sometimes. And yeah, the team that's hot right now is Vegas. LA Thieves are in that up and down tier right now. So even though my model's pointing me in the direction of LA Thieves, it's one where it's okay, let's remember how these teams are doing over the last couple weeks, and that to me boosts Vegas up a little bit. So to me, this one is just steer clear. They mark it as a toss-up game. I am very much in the camp that it is. It's a huge leverage game for champs, right? We have the current 7 seed in LA Thieves, and we have a team that's 5 points behind them. So if Vegas were to win this, they are going to jump Thieves and maybe one other team, maybe Ravens. I can't remember exactly where Legion are, but either way, they're jumping them, and that's a big deal. Both of these teams' outlook for Major 4 is good. I'd say Vegas is in a better situation now. LA Thieves really need a win this weekend, and this one is very winnable for them. I believe their Sunday game, which we'll talk about in a little while, is against New York Subliners. So if you're LA Thieves, get a win against Legion on Friday night, because you don't want to have to deal with Subliners at the end of the week. Maybe your champ situation is in flux. Maybe your losers bracket, winners bracket situation is in flux. So get this one if you can. The issue is, yeah, Vegas look very dangerous right now. If you are LA Thieves, though, I do think you can still bank on your search and destroy. You can maybe get 2 wins out of that, and then finding something somewhere else. The path is very clear if you're LA Thieves, where it's, okay, we know Legion are red hot in hardpoint. We are a little so-so, but maybe we can pull out one of those and rely on our search. I do have them as favorites in control, but again, Vegas trending up in control at the moment, so that one very much a toss-up. Huge game, listed as a toss-up. That's the way I see it. If you like Legion, I'm totally okay with that considering how they've been looking lately, but I just want to be aware that Thieves are this team that is hot and cold at times, and I wouldn't be shocked if they bounce back and get a win here. That's the tricky part. The thing that is interesting is Thieves have the minus 1.5 sign next to them, but to me, they are the team best equipped to win in a game 5. If you like Legion, maybe even play the Legion minus 1.5, because their hardpoint is so hot right now that maybe they can just rely on those to get them to the finish line. Yeah, a lot of different ways you can play this. If you have a strong opinion, go for it. I'm just going to steer clear completely, I think.
Yeah, I do Legion, but I can see the desire to not get in on this game. I think it could be a very close game, and then we're not looking for just winning games. We're looking for value, right? And if you don't see a lot of value in this game, then it makes sense to stay away from it. Moving on, FaZe versus Miami. FaZe a minus 1,000 on the money line, minus 2.5 plus 110, minus 300 on the money line, minus 250 in the search, and minus 1,200 in the control. Minus 1,200 in the control. More favored in the control than they are in the match overall, by the way. That's great. And the model agrees, actually. I just realized, I'm like, that's an insane stat. I'm looking at my model actually agrees that they are more they're more likely to win the control than they are the match. Yeah, I actually like the minus 2.5 for FaZe here. Again, this is a weird part of this year where you see stuff like, oh, okay, yeah, this is Miami is in contention for the 4th best, 5th best team in the thing, and they are like they're only like a 40% chance to win a map against the top team. Like, that's the year we're in. And The problem was with phase the fact that like what, and you mentioned it the last time, what phase are we going to see here? Is phase going to be like, let's play sub base? Be like, no, don't play sub base. Now they actually, the last couple times they banned sub base. So that's self-awareness. You want to see that in a sports team, self-awareness that maybe we shouldn't play this map. But at the same time, you're like, if they need to play it in a grand final, they're going to want to put that in there, or they just don't care, really, right? Does this hard point really matter? The answer is probably no, right? Does it make sense to practice on this a bit? Maybe get a bit more practice on a map we're not good at, right? That's the thing. And this is where, although my model says the -2.5, I'm not running to bet that at +110. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, this one is less playable to me than the FaZe Toronto game, just based on what you said, right? Map vetoes could get weird again with FaZe. But you made a good point, though. They did ban sub-base last week entirely. Their matches went as expected, most like they swept Boston easily. Their game against Thieves was a little interesting, but at the end of the day, FaZe did win. But again, this is one where this weekend could be interesting for FaZe because I think they will square up completely against Toronto. That's a big game. It's good practice. Let's just play the maps that we would play them on if this were a grand finals. I think that's what both teams are thinking. Let's just square up, see how we look on these maps. If FaZe were to win that series versus Toronto, which they are favored to do, they could come back in this match and go, all right, it's Miami Heretics. We're basically a lock for the 1 seed at this point. Why not play sub-base some more? There is value in consistently playing it as the year comes to an end. Just if you get to a grand finals, if you're FaZe, and you are the team coming from the lower bracket, there is a really good chance your opponent is leaving sub-base in the rotation. It's so tricky, right? And I just think it's a psychological boost for FaZe if they were to get to that situation of like, all right, we got to play sub-base. We have the reps on it now. They haven't all gone our way, but we have the reps, and maybe we can pull this out. So this series specifically feels like here go FaZe again playing with their food, and maybe it's fine. Maybe they sweep easily because they're FaZe, but just that unknown is a big stay away for me. My model doesn't really see value in anything. I'm right on market with everything pretty much. It's a steer clear for me. It's probably the least appealing game of the weekend, so I'm not sure this is going to be one that I'm watching, but obviously a huge game for Miami if they were to win it somehow. But yeah, I think all signs point to a FaZe sweep or a FaZe maybe 3-1 if Miami are able to pick off a search or a hard point or something like that. But yeah, Control, totally justified. FaZe are elite, best team in the league in Control, and to me, Miami are probably the worst team in the league. So it doesn't really matter what map you play in that mode specifically. FaZe really should come out with the win. That is an interesting wrinkle, though, to see them bigger favorites in map 3 than the series overall. But that's where we are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it is. It's a very interesting potential there for that game. But yeah, probably not the most watchable game or bettable game. Saturday, match 2, LAG versus Seattle. Seattle -250 in the money line, -1.5 +100, -200 in the hard point, -163 in the search, and -138 in the control. Yeah, my model likes LAG. My model really loves LAG here. I'm not sure why my model is so out on Seattle right now, but it is. Yeah, I don't necessarily hate the idea of LAG in this spot, especially as a team that I think people are like, oh, they're one of the bad teams, which, like, I guess comparatively, every team that's not a top 4 team is a bad team, but it's just they are okay, and this is the thing where it's like, where you generally, especially on that lower tier, you usually get to be able to have value on some of these teams, and we've had so little of that this year, and my model at least is just screaming out for value on LAG here. Your model isn't in love with Seattle either, but you're definitely not in love with. Where do you fall on this one? Is this a stay away for you, or do you see some value in this one?
No, I don't love it, but I do side with you on LA Gorillas in this spot. Mostly through Control. Right now, LAG, listed as even money to win that, but I do have them favored on 2 out of the 3 Control maps. So assuming the vetoes play out in a somewhat expected way, I do think LAG map 3 should be maybe closer to minus 120. I don't think they're big favorites on any control map in particular, but I would lean LAG, so they're getting a little boost for me there. They did look really good last week. That is something to take note of. Their hardpoint has been improving over this stage, so if you want to look at LAG map 1 at plus 150, especially if LAG get that map 1 pick in the series, that could be really nice. If you'd rather just take them to cover map 1, that's okay too. They've fought really close, even in the hard points they've lost this stage. I believe they played Atlanta really close. They've played a lot of teams really close on hard points, or they're just winning them outright. So LAG trending, like sneaky trending up. And again, Seattle doing that. They're hot, they're cold, they're hot, they're cold thing. So yeah, I do side LAG here. The prices aren't great, so maybe wait and see if they get a little better. But I'm definitely not siding with Seattle in this spot. So give me LAG. Again, don't love it, but I like it enough that it is somewhat intriguing. It's just tricky now, Robert. We're getting to the part in the year where the market is really tough to beat. We have so many data points on all of these teams by now that you're really looking for scraps at this point in the year. It's tricky, but give me LA Gorillas nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Moving on, Saturday match 3, Optic versus Boston. Optic, as we discussed before, a minus 5,000 on the money line, minus 2.5, minus 125, minus 2,000 in the hard point, minus 2,000, minus 300 in the search, and minus 500 in the control. My model likes Boston, and it likes them a lot in the hard point as well. I'm not sure exactly why. Not to win, but to have a shot in the hard point. I view Boston as having a half-decent shot at the hard point, or at the plus 2.5. The thing is, and this is the thing, we've talked about Boston a lot, and oh, poor Boston, and yeah, it's rough, not gonna lie. But at the same time, these teams that are doomed, and you see this in the NFL too, how many times have you seen that 2-10 team going into week 14 and they just go in and they just destroy a team that's trying to get to the playoffs or something, right? Now, this could be Optic's get right spot. Optic could come in here, this could be their get right spot, they could come in, they could clean up Boston. But the last time they played, it went to a map 5. And now it's not the same team as before, because it was Shawnee in instead of
Beans and Pentagram.
I want to say, I can't remember who it was. Beans, yeah, Beans. Shawnee was in for someone. They took them to a map 5. I like Boston to cover the 2.5 here. But we're not talking about Boston winning this game. To be fair, we are not talking about Boston winning this game. But I would not want to have Texas minus 2.5, and I don't think you would either. What do you think about that one?
It's tough, man, but I'm sticking with the Optic boys. Don't put me down for anything Optic, but if I were to side with a team here, it would be Optic minus 2.5. I'm interested in, your Boston plus 2.5 you show a lot of value in, but most of that it looks like is stemming from specifically hard points. So would you rather take like Boston to cover to not get swept, or would you take them like just to cover map 1 or even win map 1 outright at a huge number?
I don't have the spread in front of me. If I did, I'd definitely consider it, but we'll have to see. I think there is some potential value on them to cover map 1, right? Optic not looking the greatest in hard point. Plus you're going to get some ungodly number, plus 62 or something. 62, 65, 70. Yeah. At this point, you're like, get to 170 and you're good, right?
That's what I lean. If you like Boston, I think the one way I would play it if I had to would be like, find a big map 1 spread if it's up to 50, 60, whatever. That's what I would expect it to be at a plus 750 money line. It's probably, Boston get to 190 sort of a thing. And their hardpoint hasn't been fantastic with this new lineup, but hardpoint has gotten worse, somewhat worse over the last few weeks, where, an Optic 250 to 220 win is totally in the books, I think, for map 1. The thing that I come back to with Optic is they have this sort of run of bad luck over the last few weeks. Like, Search and Destroys have gone deep, but their round 11s haven't gone their way. The issue is, right, Optic are a good enough team where it shouldn't have to be win around 11 like consistently. They should be able to close out those searches a little quicker. Their control has slid a little. So if you're Optic, this is just a no BS. Like, you're still trying to fight for winner's bracket. Let's just beat Boston. The thing I worry with Boston, last week was the week where I was thinking, is it time to be out on Boston? Because we're getting to that point in the year where it's, do they even care? And just based on what they did last week, it was not pretty. They had their series against FaZe. That did not go well as expected. We thought maybe if FaZe had some weird vetoes, maybe that goes differently. And then they turn around the next day and play LAG, right? Like maybe the next worst team, according to most people. And their series looks a lot like their series against FaZe. Like, they didn't show up on either day. This is an Optic team that is like going to bounce back at some point. They're not just going to ride this wave of L's till champs and just flop out completely. A few weeks ago, we were considering this team among the best in the league. I think they still are, and I think they get off the mat in this one. So I lean Optic in this spot, but if you like Boston, I would probably play it just through hardpoint and say, Boston, just keep it close, because I don't know if they have the juice to actually take a map off of Optic. Maybe a round 11 goes their way finally, and they're able to win a search, but it's dicey. I'd rather play Boston just to keep it close. That's where I lean. I don't know. This one's pretty ugly, but give me Optic.
Yeah, I agree with that. Moving on. Las Vegas. Last match on Saturday. Vegas versus Rocker. Legion, minus 225 on the money line, minus 1.5, minus 120, minus 250 in the hard point, minus 110 in the search, minus 188 in the control. Again, wow, surprised my mono liked Legion. I'm completely shocked. And your mono likes Minnesota. I think I'll stick with Legion on this for now. But yeah, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this one? Minus 225 is a bit high. Minus 1.5, that's definitely, because again, you've got that massive anchor of hard point control, hard point, which is screaming out, this is how you win this series. And Rocker, it's not there. I don't think, but it could be. What are your thoughts on this? Do you see a path forward for Rocker in this or not?
No, this one feels a lot like that LA Thieves Vegas series we talked about earlier, except even worse for the not Legion team. Like, Vegas trending up, looking good. Minnesota, very much the opposite. Like, really bad stuff with their new lineup, which I was worried about heading into last week, the week prior. Like, when you shake up the team this late in the season, just out of necessity, it's a bad vibe, I think. And I hate to be going off of vibes, but you just look at the results for Rocker, and it's not pretty. They've been able to skate by here and there. They had that series against Optic earlier, in the qualifiers, but that Optic team, right, maybe not as impressive of a win. They had 2 round 11s in that. Minnesota is not it. I don't think they're going to make champs. I think they're starting in the losers bracket at Major 4. Yeah, all signs point to Vegas win this. Like you said, Vegas relying on hard point and control in your model specifically, and if that's the case, minus 1.5 at minus 120 is not a bad price at all. This one it's close to a wash for me, because I could see Minnesota just coming in randomly and making this a series, because they do that sometimes. And Vegas disappointed to end last week with that series versus LAG, but overall, I just think Vegas are the team you would rather be, and these prices I think are totally justified for Legions. I'm not taking either side in this, but I'm not going to back you down if you like Legion a lot, because it's hard to make a case against them, except for maybe the prices are too high, but I tend to think not. So yeah, go crazy with Legion. I respect it. I don't know, maybe I'm coping because Rocker are just crashing out, but yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah. I don't know. According to my model, Legion has solved hardpoint. I don't think it's that simple, but it really likes them in hardpoint. Sunday, match 1, Optic versus Ultra. Here should be a really good match. Ultra minus 150 on the money line, minus 1.5, plus 162, minus 120 in the hardpoint. So basically a dead even hardpoint. Minus 150 in the search, minus 125 in the control. My model likes Optic, weirdly, and yours does as well. Our models are very similar. My model's higher on Toronto in the hard point, but lower on Toronto and the other things comparatively to yours. But at the end of the day, we come out to similar pricing on a lot of the things. Is this Optic's shot to come back? Is this their bounce back spot? I think it might be, right? Especially in maybe the search and maybe the control. Ultra is not. A lot of people view Ultra as this kind of unbeatable juggernaut, and they did go pretty far in the major, but then they just absolutely stalled out there in the grand finals. I don't know. I find myself really struggling to bet Ultra here in this spot. Do you like Optic enough to take a shot here with them?
I do. This one very close to a toss-up for me, so seeing Optic at plus 110 is enticing. And you look at the map-by-map stuff, for me at least, like map 1, map 2, the hardpoint and the search is, I think, very likely to split. It comes down to map 3, and for me, I give a slight edge to Optic in that mode. For Toronto, it's been a mode they started the year a little weak in, and it's gotten better for sure as the year has gone on, but I do lean ever so slightly with Optic, assuming map vetoes play out somewhat normal. But I do think there is a hidden wrinkle in this game where Optic are playing for something, and Toronto might get cute with vetoes. They might do the phase thing where it's, hey, we're locked into winner's bracket, we get to play Optic here, they're not a huge threat. They could make the winner's bracket if they win this, but hey, it's a good team, let's get some good practice on some maps we don't play a lot, or some maps that we are bad at, or whatever. If that's the dynamic, and Optic are vetoing how they should, and Toronto is vetoing more creatively, I guess would be the word, then we could have a map set that really points to an Optic win, perhaps, or maybe push it to a Game 5 at least. That's another hidden wrinkle, I think, in this that's not getting talked about a lot. And then one other thing I want to mention, Toronto's first series against FaZe, they are underdogs in, and Optic, their first series is against Boston, which they are just massive favorites in. If those play out as expected, we could see these prices converge a little bit. So if you like Optic in this series, I would take them now as opposed to waiting until Sunday comes. I lean Optic. Most of that is banked on control and expecting them to get a somewhat favorable map set. But again, not sure how Toronto are going to play this based on how their early series goes against FaZe. How do they want to shove Optic down into lower bracket? I'm assuming yes. So maybe it plays out more straight up than I'm giving it credit for. But yeah, I think all signs point to Optic just ever so slightly. But this one is, it's a tough one to call. It's a tough weekend for Toronto for sure. But yeah, very interesting game as we wind down on Sunday.
Yeah, I agree. Sunday, match 2, Carolina versus Boston. Carolina minus 450 on the money line, minus 1.5, minus 163, minus 250 on the money line for the hard point, minus 250 for the search, and minus 175 for the control. My model weirdly likes Boston. I've got Boston not favored to win, but it definitely likes the plus 1.5 at plus 120. Definitely likes that number. Carolina, it likes, again, it's liking Boston in the hard points. What is it with this model and contrarian hard point stuff? It really seems to like other teams in hard points. But yeah, it's a very interesting match, and this is a match Carolina needs, but at the same time, Boston is they're fighting for their lives here, right? And that's the thing. And you can never, whenever a team is down like that, you can never count them out. Carolina might be thinking, oh, this is easy game, Boston, they're horrible, etc. But you never know with some of this, right? So, yeah, I don't hate Carolina here. I don't hate Boston here. Maybe not to win. Give them some value on the to win. But I think at a certain point, Boston is going to say, okay, let's win some maps. We're not even talking winning series here. We're talking winning maps. We're talking about winning maps and covering hardpoint spreads, which they're currently unable to do. But I feel like at a certain point, they're going to sit down and be like, all right, look, we are professional players. And you've seen this before in past leagues, right? In past years, right? When Seattle was basically eliminated from champs, that pressure was off them. They started doing stuff too. I think Boston is basically eliminated. They might start getting a bit of a resurgence here. So, yeah, let's see what Boston can do in this. I'm on Boston here. What do you think?
I can't. I already mentioned, yeah, I just think Boston showed their true colors last week in that series versus it's tough. I think your analogy that you mentioned before in that Optic Boston game where it's like you get a random NFL game at the end of the year where there's a 2-win team versus an 8-win team that needs to win to make it. This, to me, feels like that, right? Carolina are on that bubble, both for Major Four and for champs, and Boston are just dead fish right now. This is, the second to last qualifier game of the season. Those vibes definitely ring true, I think, in this match. But I'm still taking Carolina. I don't love it. I think map 2 makes some sense. Their search and destroy has been pretty good the last few weeks, despite their so-so overall record. Their search has improved, which has been somewhat of a concern for them throughout the year. So to see that improve is nice. And as we know, Boston's search is just cursed at this point, basically. Boston, I do see some value map 3, as I have throughout the year, but again, totally different team, and my model isn't taking into account how bad this team has been in control the last few weeks. Yeah, the only case I can make is for Carolina, except for that look out, because Boston might do that weird thing where they just win this series even though they don't have to, and Carolina do. So yeah, maybe if you want to talk about pressure, that's something that would concern you if you're Carolina. This is Carolina's only series of the weekend, though, so they have plenty of time to prepare for Boston, figure out what map vetoes they want to do. They'll get a look at Boston against Optic the day prior. That's nice for Carolina, I think. It is a lot of sitting around and waiting, though, for Ravens. Maybe they'd rather do this game Saturday or maybe even Friday afternoon, but yeah, they got this slot instead. So it's tricky, but at the end of the day, I'm just done with Boston. Yeah, I guess Ravens by default.
Fair. All right. Last game of the regular season, unless there's tiebreakers, which also don't count for points, but whatever. Thieves versus Subliners. Subliners minus 250 the money line, minus 1.5, minus 120. Map hard point minus 175. Search minus 150, and the control minus 250. And this is what we've got. My model likes the Subliners a lot here, actually. Especially in the hard point, you don't really agree. You really like Thieves here. I think the thing is, Subliners are like what you think. Subliners are such a hard team to peg this year. It's so hard. It's like they're either like a really good 5th team or like the worst of the top teams. And I feel like no matter what game it is, you can find data points. You're like, oh, they almost beat FaZe. Clearly they're a top 4 team. And then they then lost to someone else, right? I can't remember who it was. There was someone they lost to, I think, after that. I can't remember what it was, or almost lost to. And you're like, see, they're not a top 4 team. But then they beat Optic, but it's a map 5, right? New York this year is like the pick your own adventure book here. It's whatever you think they are is what you can find the data points to say what they are. I think they are the 4th team. I think they are a solidly 4th team. I think they are on their better days. They're closer to the 4th team. They're closer to Optic and Ultra than they're not. But I think they've had some rough days, and that's why you see that point standing where they are. I think they're turning around a little bit, and this is why I will be on Subliners minus 1.5 this week. Where do you see this one? Do you like Thieves here? Do you want to jump in front of Subliners or not? What do you think?
No, I don't. Yeah, my answer is no. I just see these teams somewhat similarly. Yeah. I see these teams somewhat similarly in how they've performed lately. New York have squeaked by in a couple series. You mentioned they had a series loss earlier this stage. They got swept by Vegas, and that was very eye-opening at the time. But as we've seen, Vegas have looked pretty good, including that series. But yeah, New York have some round 11 wins here and there, some game 5 wins here and there versus Rocker and versus an Optic team that's slumping a little. But it's not like Thieves have impressed you the last few weeks either. I think these teams, relative to how they started the stage, haven't really moved much for me. They've shown some good, they've shown some bad. So yeah, I'm just kind of I'm going to stick with my priors and say New York are the better team. Search is very much a toss-up for me, so if you want to take LA Thieves plus 110 because these teams are going to split, so why not take a team that's above even money? You can make a case for that, but everything else, it just feels like New York can bank on control more than Thieves can, and because of that's vaulting them up for me. I think you agree with that control take. Yeah, the hard points for both of these teams, I would agree New York's hard point has been improving lately. Thieves still very up and down in that mode. I don't know. I could see a New York 3-1 if their hard point continues to look that good, or maybe it goes to a map 5. And if it does, I think Thieves are very live to win, but it's just a tough call with this one. Thieves need it more. There's definitely that aspect to it, but we'll see if that actually plays out for them or not. But yeah, I'm not going to hate on you if you like subliners. They are the better team, and it seems like they're starting to get into that rhythm of, all right, let's get ready for Major 4. Let's get ready for champs. We belong. I think they are the 4th best team in the league like you do. So yeah, if you like subliners, go for it.
Yeah, sounds good. And that is it for us this week in terms of our basically market analysis. Let's look at our beating the market picks. So I am stepping in front of the train. Boston plus 2.5 versus Texas. Little scary, not gonna lie, but you know what? I think sometimes weird things happen, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of pressure on Optic to sweep them, and they might just say, you know what, maybe they blow a map somewhere and they just say, all right, whatever, pick it up. I do not think Boston's going to win this series. To be fair, I don't think Boston's particularly going to win any series this weekend. But do I think they can steal a map and Optic gets really scared and panicky? Yeah, I think they can. I've also got Miami plus 100 versus Seattle. I really do like Miami there. My model's out on Seattle, and I just like this Miami team. This Miami team the last couple weeks has become really fun. And then also I'm going to double up on Friday. I've got Las Vegas versus Legion minus 120 versus Thieves. You are, there you go. We're both picking Miami versus Seattle. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. And then also you've got Optic versus plus 110 versus Toronto. I actually do like that one as well. I actually like that one. And then also you've got LEG plus 175 versus Seattle. I also like that one as well. So violent agreement between us this week on a lot of our things, the exception of Boston. But that's just me being crazy and stepping in front of a train that I probably shouldn't step in front of, but we're going to because YOLO. Combined model plays, surprisingly not a lot this week. There is a lot of differences in some of her models, especially on hard points. But we love Miami on Friday. And we like Vegas on on Friday as well. We love Legion on Saturday, and Optic. I don't know which we do not like Optic and Hardpoint against Ultra, but we like Optic and literally everything else against Ultra. Everything else instead of that. That is it for us this week. We will be back next week, early next week, before the major. So let me just think. I'm realizing now, maybe no, I think Tuesday is the better day. I will think about which day we're going to be doing. I'm not sure if it's going to be released on Wednesday or Tuesday or Wednesday or not, but it will be earlier than the major next week. So you guys will be able to see that when it'll be out next week. Other than that, see everybody. Have a good week, and we'll see you next week. See everybody.